Okay, so today we're going to talk about an aspect of grief. Whenever we're talking about grief, feel free to pause the video, do some self-care. But we're going to talk about an important aspect of why grief doesn't fully happen. So as you recall, grief at Nam, and really everywhere, but definitely at Nam, grief is not just about lost people, it's lost people. What else? Places. What else? Things. What else? Ideas. What else?
Fantasies.
Good. Okay? Meaning? You need to have an expanded version of grief. Grief ਹੈਗਾ ਕੱਲਾ ਲੋਕ ਦੀ ਡੈਥ ਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ, ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਮੂਵ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਗਿਆ ਜਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਹੋਣਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਉਵੇਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਇਆ, grief hoga. So everything is a subject to a grieving process. When you don't get what you thought, so when your expectations not met, matlab jime hona si ome hoya nahi, it results in a grief reaction. Period. You can deny this. You can say it's not true. Denial is first stage grief. Lots of people are in denial chronically about the real reality, which is if your son grew up and you thought for 20 years they'd be a doctor for sure, and then they didn't finish high school, you're going to grieve. Grief has stages. So grief, there's denial stages, right? What are the stages of grief? First is denial. Next, bargaining. Next, anger. Next, sadness. Next, acceptance. There's an excellent video on grief. I suggest everyone watch it. But this is a synopsis of that. Now, why does grief get stuck? Okay, that's what we're talking about today. What makes us get stuck? That's the question. Lots of things, but there's a big one that I want to talk about today, which is grief is very natural. If a dog loses something, they'll grieve. A dog will never get stuck in grief. That's a unique human thing. I don't know. Maybe chimps. Maybe dolphins. That's never been shown. But they do have more intelligence, those animals. But I suspect they don't get stuck because the stuck grief has everything to do with your frontal cortex. So humans have one, and it's big. So grief is quite natural. So this is natural. This will just naturally happen. If you're a healthy person, these stages will naturally flow through. And remember what we said? Grief is about layers of the onion. And it's the longer you've known someone. So if you thought that your son would be a doctor for 20 years, you built a large fantasy around that. That's an example of a fantasy. You had a fantasy that didn't end up how it was. Or you thought you'd marry Prince Charming. Oh, it's going to be a perfect marriage. And then you marry an alcoholic. You can't just forget about this idea that you held since you were a child. You can't just forget about it. You have to process it. You have to grieve it. it gets stuck for a variety of reasons, but there's one big one. And that is what we call mistakes. So what happens? We had a passing away of a member of the Nam community, so ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ death ਹੋਈ ਸੀ ਇੱਥੇ, and every time a patient of a doctor dies, I'll just tell you about doctors, how doctors are, and how this doctor is. This doctor invests himself heavily in the well-being of people. And so when someone passes away, I have to grieve. Everyone who's ever passed away under my watch, consciously, subconsciously, or unconsciously, I have to grieve it. And then I think some cases, they move very easily, right? I knew the person, I did the best I could, things happened, passed away. Those are not the things that get stuck. It moves very smooth. Where it gets stuck is where I think, doesn't have to be real, doesn't have to be true, but the self-opinion is that mistakes were made by me. ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਉਹ ਦੀ death ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਕਸੂਰ ਸੀਗਾ ਮੇਰਾ, when I feel like I had something that I did not do, that I should have, could have, would have, should have, right? Coulda, woulda, shoulda. You heard that? So, coulda, woulda, shoulda. मैं कर सकता सी, मैं करना सी, पर कीता नहीं. I coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I didn't. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I didn't is internalized in your cortex as a mistake. And a mistake, especially if you're raised in such a way that you were not allowed to make mistakes, you were punished heavily for making mistakes. If you didn't clean the dishes good, you're slapped, or you got like silent treatment. Lots of stuff that happens in our early childhood makes it so that we don't feel like we can make mistakes. What happens is you get blocked processing. You get stuck in a stage. You get stuck in a stage because going further in that stage means you have to acknowledge that mistakes were made. You ever hear that? Don't talk about like the things people have done, or you get bothered when people remind you of your mistakes. Well, what do you do? What do you do with people who are always reminding you of your mistakes? Do you talk to those people all the time? ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਗਲਤੀਆਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਹਟ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ. We stop talking. We avoid mistakes. We avoid our mistakes. We avoid, and trauma, PTSD is all about avoidance. And as time goes on, first we avoid like the direct reminder of the mistake. That's the circle. But as time goes on, it grows in our head, and then we avoid the thing that reminds us of the direct mistake. An example here is, let's say someone let's say I prescribe a drug, amoxicillin, and someone dies because they have an allergy and I didn't ask. This happens. I don't know if this is happening to me, but it may well have happened. Things, no one tells you about your mistakes oftentimes. So there's all sorts of mistakes you've all made that you don't think you made, that you think everything's fine. But I assure you, everyone's made mistakes. Probably everyone's made life-ending mistakes at some point. So the thing is, okay, so make a mistake. So I prescribed amoxicillin and someone passed away, so that sucks, right? Painful. So what does the mind do? Okay, that person dies. Can't let it go, so what do? We put away the memory. We put it away. Okay, forget about Mr. T. He's gone. But what happens is your mind then, it avoids, it wants to avoid that memory, right? So over time what will happen is Mr. T always liked to wear yellow. So what will happen is now yellow shirts, you won't want to wear yellow shirts. Your preferences will change. Not because you link yellow to Mr. T, but subconsciously you do. It's linked. And so you'll avoid. Then what's going to happen is there's a lot of yellow shirts at Walmart. Weird as this is, now you just start avoiding Walmart. They have that smiley thing, don't they? Right? The smiley thing? I think that's Walmart, right? Walmart has the smiley thing. And then you start avoiding the things that are indirectly linked. Maybe grocery stores in general now give you panic attacks. This is what happens over time. And you're not aware of it. All you know is after a lot of time has passed, you have a very peculiar lifestyle. There's things that you just don't do. And you're very particular, and no one really knows why. Everyone knows that you are, and you're kind of like this. And you're fine. Don't move me. I'm good. This is comfortable. Because it is. Because over time, you started straight, but a little bit of avoidance, you started walking like this, a little bit more, and then after 20 years, this is comfortable. And any attempt to change this is painful. So you don't. And there's a lot of people leading rigid lives. And that's how it happens. This is just the basic neurobiology of PTSD, folks. This isn't Dr. Gill's opinion. This is just how it is. Avoidance grows in time. And there's nothing that drives avoidance like mistakes that you've made. That's just how it is. Parents really, really don't like talking about mistakes they've made with their kids. Try talking to your parents about that. Not going to go well. Unless they're in recovery. आपकी मम्मी डैडी दे नाल उन्हां दी जेहड़ियां गलतियां ओह तां गल करनी नहीं चाहुंदे. No one will want to talk about them. But here's the thing. And I was talking to someone about the 12 steps of AA, and guess what step 4 is? Evaluate your character. Now, why would they do that? Why would they put that in the 12 steps? Like the big book studies, right? Like, you start off, you have 30 people, and then once you get to step 4, you have like 5. Step 4 is where you talk about your mistakes, where you make a fearless and searching moral inventory. And no one really likes it. Why is it necessary? The neurobiology of it is just this. When we don't deal with our mistakes, the grief process remains stuck. We can't let things go. Stress doesn't go down. And we continue to be stuck. And if stuck means drunk all the time, can't stop marijuana, can't stop being angry, can't stop being depressed, that's what you stay as. Because grief cannot be let go until there's an admission that you had a component. Now, do you have to admit to somebody else? In AA, admit to yourself, to God, and to one other person. If that's your thing, that's your thing. But the thing is at the very least, take someone that you're looking to grieve and that you haven't grieved. A way you can unstuck grief is you can start contemplating your 1%. In our principles, we talk about own your 1%. That's why. Because when you own your part of it, the non-community member who passed away, he was under my care. I had lots of opportunities. I couldn't detect his blocks. I didn't have what I needed to help him. It doesn't matter if a mistake is real or not. Most people's conception of mistakes is not real. It's something that's guilt-based and I coulda, woulda, shoulda, but really you had no power over any of that. Oh, I should have stopped my son from going out that night. What, you're going to stop your son going out every night? Because you're worried he's going to have an accident? He's never going to develop as a human being. He's going to be a coddled kid. It'll ruin him. But if your son died in a car accident that happened like that, your system will register that as a mistake. You have to own it. Or at least think about it, write it out, process it. And what you'll find is all of a sudden, grief will start moving. Talk to a pastor, talk to a friend, talk it out. And what will happen is your grief, which is a natural process, if there's no blocks, if there's no avoidance, it'll just, tears will flow, anger will happen, denial will be like, yeah, that jerk, this and that, and you'll just start moving through it, and it'll be good. They talk a lot in AA about a daily inventory. An inventory is your part of it. It doesn't mean that people around you are perfect. Everyone's like, oh, well, they're not admitting their mistakes. Why should I? Because it's driving your blood pressure up. Come on. It's making you relapse. It's making it so you have chronic pain all over the place, or whatever the heck your problem is. Whatever your problem is making it worse. That's why. Your anger or resentment of them is not, it's not hurting them. Directly anyways. So the point is when we don't grieve, and then when it comes to long relationships, okay? When it comes to relationships like parents, who hasn't said a harsh word to their parents? Who hasn't been mean to their kids? Who hasn't been in their amygdala when they've been, they shouldn't have been? Shouldn't say this, but has Dr. Gill yelled at patients before out of anger and frustration? Yeah. Why can I laugh about it? It's because I admit it. As soon as it happens, I'm like, drop the ball again. Shouldn't have let that guy into the house. Sorry it kept everybody up. My bad. And then your grieving process becomes very fast. It's when you think, well, I didn't do nothing wrong. That's you regressing to a child state. because you got beat as a kid for being wrong, but no one's beating you now other than you. No one's stopping you now from saying I was wrong. It's the most releasing, easiest thing. And what are people going to say? They're going to tell you, well, you might have been, maybe you were, maybe you weren't. Reality is it's probably going to turn out that way anyways, because that person has their journey. You know, as a society, we're so self-centric, you know? We're like, it's all about us. Like, get off your high horse, people. That's direct. Apologies. But seriously, get off your high horse. You're not that important in the hierarchy of the universe that you are responsible for every bad thing that's ever happened to people, places, and things around you. Even as a parent. You know why? You know why parents are not entirely responsible for like raising kids with problems? Is because they never had a chance. Have any of you listened to a baby scream? Like Jwak, Nyana, and like, is that easy to listen to? Does it bother you when you hear it?
Yeah.
It instantly turns on the amygdala. There's something about that sound that instantly turns on a survival response. And if you have had a lot of trauma in your life, and that baby screams, you don't have a chance. You're going to activate the old programs. You're going to respond in a harsh way. That baby's going to get dissociated. And if you do that a lot, that baby's going to have chronic complex PTSD. But is it your fault? No. You were programmed that way. Now, is it your fault that you didn't do recovery when you had the chance? Yeah, that is part of your mistake. If someone offered you a road, like what we're doing at NAM, or some other treatment program, someone gives you a choice, and you say no, that's on you. Someone programs you from a young child to be a certain way, and you get trauma activated, yeah, some little bit of that's on you for sure, but that's actually on your parents, and your parents' parents. And then all of a sudden you realize, holy crap, it's okay to make mistakes. Because I'm really not that big of a cog in the big wheel of things. I'm not. Chances are if you didn't make that mistake, things would still have happened because it was written. It was fated. It was destined. People have to die at a certain age. In the East, people die when their breath count is up. It's said that your breath count is written on your forehead, and when your last breath is up, whether that's due to an accident, homicide, or just natural illness, your last breath is your last breath. So that guy who died, was I culpable in like his death? I'm not that important. Did I make mistakes? Yeah. I'm going to admit those mistakes. Because I don't want this hanging over my head. I want to learn. I want to grow. I don't want to be this stuck, contorted, like whining guy, you know? Sorry, not to, but like seriously, that's the energy frequency of it. I want to be assertive and solve my problems and achieve my highest potential, whatever that is. And every person's potential is divine. Everyone has majesty in them. We're not dogs. And so we can realize that when we stop avoiding the things we think we've done, talk about it, and write it down, get therapy for it, right? If like it's really big and you killed somebody, okay, you got to own that too. You got to make up for that. Mistakes have to be. If you want to balance the karma of it, it's not just, yeah, sorry. It's sorry and what? The bigger the sorry, the bigger the what? When you rise to that challenge, that's why they talk about making amends in AA. It's really important. It's important that you own what you have and you try to make up for it as best you can without hurting anybody. Sometimes it is just, I'm sorry, and I can't do anything other than express that and try to just be doing my recovery. That's usually the answer. And that's enough, because recovery is hard work. You can't superficially go there. It's not going to give you the flow through. But recovery is the antidote. If recovery is honest, and to get there, you need to build up. So, like, how do you avoid avoiding? How do you stop avoiding? You have to build yourself up really strong. Surround yourself with really strong people who have courage, who will celebrate you for wanting to heal. It's hard on your own, so you need a community. You need people around you. You need resources. In AA, step 1, 2, and 3 is all about building your relationship with your God of your conception, or a higher power, or something greater than yourself. This is because if you don't do it that way, you're going to avoid. You're going to only acknowledge the easy stuff. You're not going to go to the dark stuff, the hard stuff, which is fueling your addiction, or fueling your temper tantrums, or your panic attack, or your pain, or this or that. So you build yourself up. Build yourself up, but don't forget that, because you cannot stay built up forever. This is essential to stopping the propagation of trauma avoidance in your neurobiology. That's all I have to say on this. Questions? Or comments? Yes, go ahead.
So when you work on your stuck situation, does it take you back to the grief stages?
Yes.
Okay.
When you do recovery, it will automatically unstuck. And it's an automatic process. People are like, I need to go to grief therapy to grieve. That's silliness. Grief therapy is good, but you don't need grief therapy to grieve. Okay? That's our Western, like, human-centric kind of like, you have to come to me in order to heal. That's garbage. That's primarily why that's garbage. I'll tell you why that's garbage. It's because it's not practical. 7 billion people? Do we have another 7 billion grief therapists ready? And can you afford them? No one can. The system can. That's why the system doesn't pay for mental health. It's because the system asks a very wise question. It's like, oh my goodness, if we start, where will we stop? So you get session limits, right? They're not wrong. If you don't do the work yourself, there's no amount of therapy that can help you. So you do the recovery and watch all the various videos on recovery. It will naturally unstuck and stuff. Your brain wants to heal just like wounds on your body. Do they ask you? Does your cut on your body ask you? Does the cut on your body ask you, hey boss, is it okay if I put some blood vessels there and put some fibroblasts and send some neutrophils and oh, there's a bit of an infection. Can I fight that? Is that cool? Do your wounds do that? They don't. Because you have an intrinsic wound healing system that knows what it's doing. Provided you get rid of the dirt in it. And if there's a rip-roaring infection, you go to a doctor and get some antibiotics. Or if it's a big wound, go get some surgery to cover it, right? Those are things you need to do if the wound, but most wounds don't need it. And so does it stand to reason that you have like a mental wound system of healing? Do you need a plastic surgeon for every wound? Thank God. It's expensive. And it hurts. They have sharp things they use to probe wounds. It hurts, right? Your wounds will even expel glass. You know, like you get glass in there. Your body may take a couple of years, but it'll push them out. You have a mental and a spiritual wound healing system. You really do. It does get stuck by dishonesty. It gets stuck by avoidance. It gets stuck by non-acknowledgement of your part. Inauthenticity is like the number one reason why prayers don't work. Lots of people say, I don't believe in God, prayers don't work. I prayed for A, B, and C, it didn't happen. Very good chance that there was inauthenticity there. Very good chance there was dissociation that prevented that authentic expression of what was needed. Very good chance, in fact 100% chance of, if you address that, of healing. The mental and spiritual wound healing systems, they get stuck by things where there's guilt. They get stuck when we're like, oh my God, if I visit that emotion, I may never come out whole. That's not true. No emotion is so negative that you can't feel it and come out whole. But you think it. You think you're going to die, but you're not. If you have courage. Recovery is going those places. And if it's too unstable, go with help. Go with a therapist. Go with a sponsor. Go with somebody in a community, in a circle. Millions of ways to heal that don't involve paying someone $200-300 an hour. In fact, you have to. There's no option. Other questions, comments?
What if you have ongoing issues with, like I'm not the center of the universe by any means, but sometimes you're in life situations where they seem like you can't really get out of them, and a lot of times it's people, places, things. You're talking about crying baby earlier, and that noise. I get really sensitive with noise and things like that, and so I'm not going to get into specifics, but there's certain people that I find are really loud, and I'm in a situation now where I deal with it over and over again, and it doesn't go away. So how do you put this grief thing into that sort of a situation, right? Mm-hmm. Because like, where's my part in it? Like, I don't know. I'm not the one being loud or disrespectful or whatever. So how do you deal with that?
So basically, that's a question of when it gets for example, a startle response. Why do loud noises bother me? Mm-hmm. That's like some stuff happens long ago. I don't know. Maybe you watch something happen and a loud noise for whatever reason became a trauma thing. And most people don't even remember what the original one was. What ends up happening is it starts to reverberate and echo. And when you get to your age, then at age, whatever, 50s, 60s, right? Loud noises bother you. And so there's two parts to it. One is to deal with this neurobiological issue. The other is to make life manageable. But making life manageable by avoiding triggers just puts the battle off for another day. And what happens is it just gets loud, it gets bigger. So practically, sure, got to adjust your environment to make it not triggering or less triggering. But the real question you should ask is, and this is in another video, triggers are signposts to where further healing is needed. This is how. A trigger today should make you think, oh, okay, Dr. Gill said this is reverberating out of the past. Maybe I should deal with that. We all have that. Irritants of today. And what do we do with irritants? We avoid the people or the persons or the things But the more you avoid, the more you become contorted and the less you can tolerate. Maybe the next place you move into, there's a loud neighbor. Maybe there's a dog barking all the time. Yeah, you can complain to the landlord, but that's what happens. It contorts you. So isn't it not easier to do the hard work to reverse the process so that that trigger no longer bothers you? It's a choice. You can continue avoiding, but avoiding, walking around like this, you know why that's the problem? It's because it puts stress on this SI joint over here. It's only a matter of time before arthritis builds in that. Humans are built biomechanically perfect. Perfect. The foot is perfect. Just the right distribution for your body habitus so that it can conduct force without putting too much force on any one issue. My toe hurts for the last couple of days, so I limp. But when I limp, I put weird pressure on my knee. Then my knee hurts. Then my hip hurts. And my other knee hurts. Then my other hip hurts. This is how it happens. And then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, this is comfortable. But sustaining this creates another pressure point, which makes you find another position that's even worse. And so people in recovery are contorted in weird positions in life, where lots of stuff makes them unmanageable, lots of stuff drives up stress, but avoiding leads to the final thing, which is you end up in jail. And nobody cares. Because it's noisy in jail. No one cares. You end up in a hospital, you end up homeless, you end up in a shelter, and people don't care about your accommodation needs. That's the problem. So if you can accommodate a trigger without contorting yourself, then sometimes that's needed. If you can short-term accommodate a trigger to make life manageable so you can work on the deeper issue, that's good. But the vast majority of people, what do? They just avoid the trigger. They feel better, not realizing now they've added another echo. Another thing that they're going to avoid, and then they're going to avoid things that lead to that thing, which makes them even more. And it's a choice. I'm here only to offer choices. But you should know what you're choosing, though. Lots of people, and why I say parents are not always to blame for how they treated their kids, is because they're programmed from a young age. But everyone gets choices, though. So as soon as you meet some teacher, some person who's telling you how it is, and now you have that knowledge, and now you do nothing to fix that, now you are accountable. Now you do have responsibility. And if you never had anyone to teach you, the universe always offers a teacher in some way, shape, or form. It always offers a way. Will you take it? I don't know. I hope so. That's why we're here. That's why lots of people like us are around. This is why grief gets stuck. This is why you're all contorted in a mess. This is why emotions, you don't know where to start. So join a program. Do some therapy. There's lots of ways to undo this. I'm just telling you the diagnosis. Recovery is the antidote. 100 videos now on recovery. Holy crow, 100 videos. I think we'll leave it at that today. Thank you. And it is a triggering topic, so please do some self-care or something. Tapping. There's lots of videos on that to just regulate. Thank you.